Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShanaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I feel particularly honored by our guest today being here, Michael Kimmel. Michael, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Yeah, great to be with you, Shana.
Michael is one of the world's leading experts on men and masculinities. And I will say, Michael, I heard you speak at the Better Man Conference, and I've watched all your TED Talks and, read some of your work. And as a woman ally for men, I feel really grateful that you are, an ally for women in all that you talk about with gender equality. And one of the things I really, really appreciate about you is you're not out there supporting gender equality and how do I want to say this? It's like you're not out to get men or punish men or have men feel bad about themselves or any of that, right? To me, you're lifting everybody up at the same time.
Well, thank you for that. I think that sees in a way what it is that where I stand in all of this. I think women know that we can't fully empower women and girls without engaging boys and men.
Yeah.
And so the question then for me is, how then can we engage men in a way that makes men see that they're stakeholders in this effort?
Yes.
And that requires that we sort of confront the kind of easy, facile, zero-sum game idea that if women win, men are going to lose.
Right.
So what I try to do in my work, which it can be controversial in that respect, is I try to say to men, gender equality is not only good for women, but it's also good for men. We're stakeholders.
Yes. And let me give you a quick intro for men who haven't heard of you, but I will say not only do you try to do that, you do that really, really well. And I've got some examples, but I imagine you might give those examples as well. But I just want men to know that you are a distinguished professor of sociology and gender studies at Stony Brook University, that you've written books, Manhood in America, Angry White Men, The Politics of Manhood, The Gendered Society, and your bestseller, Guyland, The Perilous World Where Boys Become Men. You've been doing this for how many decades?
A really long time.
A long time. You've
I'm a baby boomer, and I've been. I came to this work initially with when an organization called Santa Cruz Men Against Rape was organized in the late 1970s.
Yeah,
and then I was part of the founding of the National Organization for Men Against Sexism. There was always a really strong component of sort of men's support for anti-sexist work, mostly around violence against women in California in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So that was the era which I sort of entered this work and found some places where I could make some kind of contribution.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful. And, interestingly that we are recording this today and it's the morning after the Golden Globes. And we were just talking about how Oprah made her, her incredible speech referencing the Metoo movement or the Metoo. I'm not even going to say a moment because it feels like there really is a turning point and something is happening. And we had talked a couple months ago about this is what we were going to talk about. So, I feel really excited to dive into this in a way, like I said, because you're so good at helping men understand how to become a part of this movement and how they can actually benefit from this movement as well. But I think where I want to start is I want to tap into the vision you see, right? Like, what do you see this turning point as? What is happening here?
Well, I think there's several different layers of this. So let me give you a sort of historical layer first.
Great.
I think the Me Too movement, I think we're experiencing the Me Too movement as sort of coming out of the blue, like, oh my God, boom, this thing just happened. Where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for us to recognize the groundwork that has been laid. So let me just give you a little bit of history here.
Yes.
25 years ago, Anita Hill came forward and talked about what happened to her when she worked for Clarence Thomas during his confirmation hearing. And if you remember what happened to Anita Hill, she was called a woman scorned. She was vilified as one writer wrote, a little bit nutty and a little bit slutty. And she was just so vilified, and they confirmed Thomas. So what happened as a result of that? Well, here's what happened, I think. The next month, my mom calls me up and says, now my mom's a psychoanalyst, I should mention. And,
good background.
Yeah, right. So she says to me, let's have dinner. We had dinner, and she tells me over dinner something she had never told anyone a month after Anita Hill. And that was when she first entered graduate school, her advisor pushed her up against the wall and groped her. Basically did what Donald Trump confessed to having done. And she was so flustered by this, so completely unprepared, didn't know what was going on. She walked out of his office and left graduate school and never went back. Took her 30 years to go back.
Wow.
Now, here's the story, Shana. Here's what I think is important in this. What happened with Anita Hill was she was vilified. So women did not talk about this in public.
Right.
But in private, Anita Hill gave women a language to finally say to their loved ones, to their husbands, their moms, their children, this happened to me. So for 25 years, women have been talking privately about these sorts of things.
Yes.
Saying this happened to me and building it. That's 25 years. And every time in those 25 years that women came forward, what happened to those women? They were the ones who were put on trial. You'd accuse Bill Clinton or Bill Cosby. You're the one who's put on trial.
Yeah.
So that's what basically happened, was that there was 25 years of private conversations. So when this thing exploded around Roger Ailes and Harvey Weinstein and Bill O'Reilly, there was a long preparation for it. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, okay, so that's the long simmering recognition.
Yep.
The second thing is that Access Hollywood tape made a lot of women say, wait a minute, that should have disqualified him. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it didn't made them ready to move, ready to act. So when those women came forward, the big difference right now, I believe, is the women who have accused Donald Trump, the women who accused Roy Moore, we believe them.
Yeah.
We know they're telling the truth. And so that is the big difference now. When these women have come forward around Harvey Weinstein or anybody else, our immediate reaction is we believe these women.
Right. Our listening has changed, or we're the willingness to actually even publicly believe them, right? Because there may have been a private believing.
They don't have to prove that they're credible anymore. Right. They are credible. We know they're telling the truth. So that, number one, that's a real change, I think. That is basically why the Me Too movement has gotten such traction and everybody is sort of talking about it. Mm-hmm. The second thing, I think, is we're also witnessing a generational change. And I think this is really significant, and we got to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
A survey that The Economist recently put out a couple of weeks ago showed that older men, now remember, a lot of these accusations now are about behavior from 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. Well, 30 or 40 years ago, that was Don Draper's era.
Right.
And, if you remember Mad Men, Don Draper, the men all had the offices with the windows.
Yeah.
And the women were kind of gathered in a corral, the secretarial pool.
The secretarial, exactly.
And the reality is that sexual access to those women was considered a perk of the job. You'll remember that Don Draper married one of the secretaries as his second wife. Yeah. And then they got divorced when she actually wanted to have an actual life all of her own.
Right.
So older men who were raised in the Don Draper era, baby boomers, even some older Gen X guys, do not think that some of the behavior that is now being discussed is sexual harassment. They think it's office behavior.
It was normalized. It was,
of course. I mean, come on, you know this as well as I do. Women in their 50s and 60s, they will tell you stories like they say, oh, there's Ted. He has roving hands. So look, he's going to come up and he's going to call you honey, and he's going to call you, sweetheart, and he's going to give you a massage. It's just Ted being Ted. Don't worry about it. But if you have to go into the utility closet, make sure he's out of the office.
Wow.
And women were saying this kind of stuff to each other for years. Now, those men basically think that the behavior from 30 years ago, that was like Don Draper. But younger men know better. Now, of course it's true. Let me be very clear about what I'm saying here, Shana. It's always been wrong to masturbate in front of somebody. It has always been wrong to grab them by their genitals.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the more subtle kind of things that went on, the kind of the things that are now seen as demeaning, like calling you honey or sweetheart, or giving you a massage, or asking you repeatedly out for dates, or telling sexual jokes, or all those sorts of hostile environment sort of things. Now, so what's interesting is older men think there's nothing wrong with that sort of stuff. But younger men know there is.
Yeah.
So there's an emerging age gap in how we're understanding this. The older men basically think, well, that's not so bad. That's just work. And the younger men are saying, Dad, that's wrong.
Which is that, I mean, that's so inspiring to me that that's happening and that times are changing, Yeah.
Now, it's important then, since times are changing and since younger men are aware that this is inappropriate, I think we have to be careful not to judge 40-year-ago behavior.
Yes, I was just going to say that, right? I feel like it's very important to make that clear. Yes.
Because remember, let me just put it this way. Let me give you an example of something that I think we're going through right now that has nothing to do with gender exactly. But I think of this as analogous to the Confederate monuments conversation. Not long ago, 50 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody gave a thought about Confederate monuments. They were things that the South did, whatever. But now, of course, we're seeing them through a new eyes, through a new lens.
Yes.
If you grew up in Mississippi in 1957, you would have thought that segregated water fountains was normal.
Right.
That's simply how you did things.
Right.
Well, of course, that's not normal anymore. The same thing is true if you were in the workplace on the set of Mad Men in Sterling Cooper ad agency. You thought calling secretaries sweetheart or darling or honey, patting them on the shoulder, etc., was normal.
Right.
Now we know it's not normal.
Right.
So we have to be careful and gentle with the older men who grew up thinking that was normal.
I agree. And there is a way I think we have to figure out, and I think you're doing this and I'm doing this, right? How to not shame or blame or attack these men for things that were normal and, educate them to, to behave in ways that work for the people around them and that also then help them have more of the connection, the love, the success. It comes back to them, of course.
Exactly. So it's just like segregation. So how do you deal with white people in the South who say, well, wait a minute, segregated water fountains, that's just the way we do things down here. Well, not anymore.
Yep.
Now we have to do it this way. And you'll find out, and here's my part of this, my one little plug-in here is actually, you'll find out that integration is actually better than segregation. That you will benefit from it.
I love your, I'm sure you've given this in different places, but I was watching your TED Talk where you were giving the reasons,
yes.
Who benefits from men sharing in housework, right?
Yeah.
And how, and that children are actually happier and healthier and women become happier and healthier and so do men, and that men actually then get to have more sex. And, I loved that you threw that in at the end.
I know, exactly. So more gender equality is actually in everyone's interest.
Yes.
And I think, that is a message I think that men can hear rather than all right, the world's changed, and you have to basically be dragged kicking and screaming into the future.
Yeah, because it would be great, right, if we could just go out there and say, this is the honorable thing to do, and so just do it. But I do think, you talk about as well, the privilege is invisible to people who have it. And so, and it can be threatening, but the research that you've done and that you've collected, it really shows that inclusion actually does benefit everyone.
Well, that's the point that I want to make. Look, it should be enough to just say, listen, gender equality is right, it's fair, it's just, it's democratic. Let's just do it.
Yep.
I think that should be enough, but it's not. I think the piece that I want to add to that is it's actually better for men too.
Yes.
It should be enough that it's just the right thing to do. Do you remember Justin Trudeau when he was named president, when he was elected prime minister in France?
Yeah.
And he he says he names half of his cabinet. The next day he names his cabinet, half of them are women. Mm-hmm. And journalists are asking him, like, why did you do that? And his answer was, because it's 2015. Because it's normal now.
Yeah.
And it's not it shouldn't be even a question. But I think the fact that don't you think now, looking at our cabinet, that if it were half women, we'd have some better policies?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And, I do. And it's interesting because I'm also thinking of the conversation that you have around the difference between being a good man, right? Having honor, integrity, being a protector, being a provider. And then this imposter, I would call it, of, that men have taken on, that I'm supposed to be a real man. I'm supposed to be tough and strong and never show my feelings and suck it up and, never show pain and all of that. And somehow I want to loop that in too, because I do believe that one of the benefits for men when there is more gender inclusion is it becomes normalized. There's more space for men to actually get to be real and to be vulnerable and to not have to be, continually the rock, the provider, the one who has to hold it all in and be alone with it, with all of the burden, with all of the responsibility, that we as women too then get to hold up the other side of the bridge or whatever you want to call it, right?
I think I actually think that is one of the sort of hidden benefits to men. I look at companies that offer family leave, for example, because we're really not talking just about parental leave here. Right. We're talking about, you're talking about guys who say, well, I have to coach my daughter's soccer team on Saturday, and then I have to take my dad to the cardiologist. Yeah. I mean, it's really family time. But the companies that are encouraging family leave for men, the men say that they have better conversations with other men in the workplace. Because right now, most of our conversations in the workplace with other men are about two things: sports and our children's sports achievements.
Yeah.
And now these guys are saying, do you have who's the doctor that you go to? What do you do about this? They're talking about their actual lives. They're finding that they're actually having better emotional relationships with their male colleagues because of greater gender equality. So there's an unintended benefit of greater gender equality. And it's exactly what you're saying, that we've constructed this idea of masculinity that is so restrictive that makes men feel like they can't talk about what's real, that they can only talk about what's not real, that they end up saying, well, no wonder I feel so inauthentic. No wonder I feel so shut down, because I'm not allowed to talk about stuff like I want to talk about.
Right. And to be totally honest, right, it kills men. I mean, men who don't go, many men actually avoid going to doctors because there is that sense of pride and I have to be healthy. I can't be sick. I can't even go to the doctor to see if there's something going on. And so it sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah, one of my friends who works in men's health area said that a man in Zimbabwe once told him, "Real men don't get sick."
Oh, God.
And you have and you know what? The media consistently reproduces this. There's an ad for like Vicks NyQuil or something like that, where this guy is saying, "Oh, I'm really sick. I can't go to work," and and then the camera pans to a little baby.
Oh, geez.
And a voiceover says, sorry, there's no day off here. You can't call in sick. And it's basically saying, man up, dude. Take this drug, get on with it, and because you have children's responsibility. So on the one hand, they're saying you have responsibilities to your family, but on the other hand, they're saying don't ever talk about what's actually going on for you.
Right. And it's so interesting. I just had this thought that I think would be so controversial for something like this to ever happen. But I'm just going to say it here because we can say it here because I can say it here. Right. I don't want to disrespect the Me Too movement for women. And so I wouldn't say, that it would be Me Too for men or something like that. But there's a part of me that actually would love to figure out a way, whether it's a Men Too movement or something where men's stories actually get to be highlighted, where people can see stories of, like you said, real men of good men versus this man up, real man. I learned it from my coaches and my dad and my brothers and,
right.
And I've got to suck it up.
Right. To have honest conversations and to, and the thing is, I keep hearing this and I'm sure you do also. Oh, men don't want to talk about it. I think we're dying to talk about it.
I think so too.
And I think we just, but the one thing we need to feel, and you said it earlier, we need to feel safe.
Safe.
We're going to talk about it. We need to feel like no one's going to humiliate us. No one's going to use that against us. No one's going to make us feel ashamed for having feelings, for not being completely strong and powerful all the time.
Yeah.
So that idea is, so for me as a man, my question is, how can I make men feel safe enough?
Right. To do something like that. Vulnerable. Right. And I just saw, in my mind's eye, I just saw a video of a man, but his face was blurred, right? Which, it defeats the purpose, but there is the sense of, wow, I think these days still, I would imagine that it would take, I think it's one of the most, the deepest strengths to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Just, that for a man to be on camera and share a vulnerable or honest story, I think would be incredibly vulnerable, so much so that right in my mind's eye, in order to make it happen, I saw a blurred out face, like it wasn't even, right, being visible.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the safety piece, one of the things I often hear from my clients and the men I work with who are married or have been married or in long-term relationship, especially in, like you said, the 40 years ago or the baby boomer generation, I think it's changing now, but actually not as much as I think it needs to, is that when they come home to a partner who, if it's a woman, if they're feeling strong and feeling positive about their day and feeling successful and accomplished, that the woman feels drawn to them or close to them or wants to be close to them. And if they're feeling down or feeling, like they had a bad day or they're struggling with something, that women can often push away or even get disgusted, to that end of the spectrum.
Well, this is another piece, and I know that you'll agree with me here because of the kind of work that you do. But I think we ask women to carry a massive emotional burden of taking care of all of our emotional needs because we are afraid to ask for help from other men.
Right.
So I think that one of the great benefits of men supporting gender equality for women is that we will carry some of that weight.
Right.
You shouldn't have to carry it all. You shouldn't have to answer all of our emotional needs. And because it puts, you got other things to do, like your own emotional needs for one thing. So it seems to me that, nurturing good friendships among men.
Yes.
The ability to really have somebody who really has your back.
Yep.
And to feel that sort of solid foundation enables you then to talk about weakness, vulnerability, questions, things not going right, so that we don't simply sort of walk into the house at the end of the day and just sort of offload all of our stuff onto you.
Right. And I also want to say there's a difference between walking into the house and offloading and just kind of, not checking in, not asking, is this a good time for a conversation, not consciously setting up a container for
Yeah.
either partner. There's a difference between that. Well, and I guess I just said it, right? Like consciously setting up a container and actually being advocates for each other and supporting each other's growth,
Right.
because most of us are not trained on either side of that. I think, men and women both start feeling this isolation and shame and, but men especially. So it's like, I want to support what you're saying in men having friendships and men being able to talk to other men. And I also want men to be able to come home and have there be a distinction between, okay, it's not always just offloading or venting, but how do we actually constructively share our emotions with each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
That's
powerful.
the payoff. That's the payoff. Life, life's going to be better. The more gender equal our relationships, the better, the happier women are and the happier men are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to thank you for being such a strong stand for this, because I will admit that there's some part of me, I don't know why I'm still looking at this in my own psyche, but that hasn't felt, I don't want to feel entitled. And so then there's some part of me that shies away from being supported or feeling like, well, I need support from men or something. So it's really amazing for me as a woman to hear your voice being such a stand for this.
Well, thank you for that. I have to say, I don't feel, I mean, first of all, I have to say, I'm not saying anything that feminist women haven't been saying for
Right.
50 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes with a Y chromosome, everybody goes, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have a kind of choice. Do I use my voice then, my credibility, my platform to amplify those voices, to say yes, and yes, and men support this too, because or do I pretend that's not there?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest problems, and you know this very well from your work on relationships, is that women and men both are trained in our culture to approach relationships with each other as adversarial.
Yes.
You, Shayna, have something I want, and you have to decide if you are going to give it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I devise strategies to get what I want. So I get, you give it up. I get over on you. This whole idea of sexuality as him basically besting her.
Yeah.
Right? If you and I have sex, you lose, I win.
Right.
And if we approach a relationship in that way, in that adversarial way, both people lose.
Yeah.
Right? Because the excitement of any kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a sexual encounter in a singles bar, I mean, whatever it is enhanced by both people feeling that there's a mutuality and an agency. We're both, it's a win-win.
Right.
Right? If your relationships are not win-win, whether, as I said, whether it's a friendship or a hookup, it doesn't matter. You should experience it as a win-win.
And so many men tell me, that what makes sex hot is when they see, if they're having sex with women, right, is seeing a woman enjoying it. It's not just the act or the physical act of it, right? It's like,
that's the moment. I think that's a moment of revelation that you're getting, Shayna, because I think men are trained to be the desiring subjects. We know what it feels like to desire. We walk around, we see a beautiful woman, we say, ooh, I really want her. And that's what it feels like to be a desiring subject. Now, women are taught to construct themselves as objects to be desired. How do I look? Will they see me this way? Will they want me this way, etc.? So imagine the pleasure of that men can experience of being desired.
Yes.
Whoa, I didn't know that was possible. I thought I was just supposed to be this sort of engine of desire all the time. Right. And in fact, being desired is such a turn on. Yeah. But they don't tell us this in masculinity school. Nor do they but feminist women have been telling women, if you can construct yourself also as a desiring subject, it's really hot. And women have bought into that. So women have much more sexual agency now than they did, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this goes also back to something that I feel really strongly about is, men actually learning to receive. I mean, I can't tell you. So in some ways, I feel like I have the privilege of being divorced in this day and age, even though it's not been easy. But I've really gotten to, as an adult, relate with men in a dating, love, sensual way and kind of see what's going on. It's like I have a window into the world that I think a lot of people don't have. And so many men out there, or, I'll just say the sample that I've been relating with. I mean, there is this kind of starvation for being seen and heard and desired.
Yeah.
And it's been really beautiful when men have opened their hearts with me or cried and said, like, oh my God, I didn't even know I could do this. I didn't know this was available. So
Yeah, right.
again, right, there's something in there of men being taught, and the joke of the school of masculinities, right? Because we don't get educated about relationship and about emotions and about how to be on the same team in a partnership and
Right.
all these things. We're just left kind of stumbling in the dark trying to figure this out.
I know, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this. And again, continue for the work you do. And is there anything, what would you like to leave men with? Where can they find you? And also, what are your, for now, last words for today?
Well, I have two thoughts. The thing, people can reach me at my website, michaelkimball.com. And, I'm, my lectures, my lecture schedule is always up there. So if I'm coming to your town, I'd love to meet you.
Great.
And basically my work has been to engage men, to bring men into this feminist conversation. And not because it's the right thing to do, not only because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but because we men will benefit from it. It is good for us. We are stakeholders. Women can't do it alone. And we men women need us as allies, and actually allyship is something that is actually turns out to be really good for men as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. And thank you for doing the research, right? Because it's not just hearsay. It's the research has actually been done. I remember one of the things I was listening to in one of your lectures was, like I think we mentioned this, but we kind of passed over it, is the benefit to companies, that companies have said to you, oh, wouldn't this will be expensive to have gender inclusivity? And that there's actually research out there that shows, no, quite the opposite, right? That companies are making more money. And again, we don't want that to be the only reason people are doing this, but to see these benefits actually exist. It's not just...
It's not the only reason to do it, but isn't it nice that it's also
exactly
good? It's the right thing to do, and it's actually nice.
And it's actually beneficial, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.